All right, Rachel. Well, we opened the podcast today on a bit of a somber note.
Okay.
The world is reeling, and the world is reeling from a revelation of something that has existed for a long time, and it's that earlier this week we found out that Zach Hyman himself invented income inequality. And the world is reeling from this discovery, and we can only hope that the powers that be and really society as a whole come together and solve this problem that Zach Hyman himself created.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really want to wade into this. And I'm not going to, just because I feel like given my position in society, I'm probably not the best person to comment on this. I think like you and I have both had situations where perhaps we've had good points and we've presented them wrong. We've had them on the podcast
all the time. Ask Montreal Canadiens fans
precisely
if we've presented certain points wrong on this podcast.
Right. So my overarching stance on Zach Hyman is that was probably the wrong player to use, in the sense that we're talking about a player who goes out of his way to speak up on the LGBTQ plus community and Pride nights and writes children's books and things like that. However, the grander point of the fact that a hardworking person that's in the upper middle class versus a hardworking person that is below the poverty line simply do not have the same opportunities is factually correct, right? If the person who's living below the poverty line is working just as hard as the person who has parents with $10 million in their bank account, the person with parents that has 10 mil in the bank account is naturally going to have more exposure and more opportunities. So yes, you're not going to get there with only hard work, and that is a salient point. But perhaps Zach Hyman is not the guy to do it, because we're talking about an upstanding citizen in the National Hockey League. You could have made that argument for Tony DeAngelo, and it probably would have gotten you a lot further.
I could name you about 30 NHL players off the top of my head who you could use in that case study.
Every Nepo child, every kid with an NHL dad had, frankly, more opportunities than Zach Hyman because their dad played in the NHL.
Yeah, well, to that I say, follow me on TikTok and Instagram for more incredible insight, like that of which we just shared. Rachel, there's not a ton of headlines to go around. I mean, because namely the trade deadline's passed. It's really like sort of when it comes to this season, it's more of like the dog days. Like we're just trying to sort of ride it out until the playoffs. The trade deadline.
Nashville is
other than Nashville's incredible.
Like they
and we'll talk, and we're going to talk
regulation.
We're going to talk about Nashville a
bit. We might touch on them. Yes,
they're 16-0-2 since their U2 trip got canceled.
Yeah, they haven't lost in regulation since February 15th. And like, I know everyone's like, let's anoint Rick Tocchet, but we probably need to have a discussion about Andrew Brunette now as well.
It's almost like he was a great coach.
Yeah. Should not have lost his job. Yeah. Probably not.
I mean, look, he technically was still the interim guy and the guy that replaced him took that team to the Cup final right away, and it seems to be exactly the voice that team needs right now. But
I think he probably was a better voice than Lindy Ruff was in New Jersey, and they probably should not have lost him.
Well, yeah, now they left, or they let Lindy Ruff stay there. And look, I get it, Lindy Ruff, like, the Devils were really good last year, so like they
were. Why are you hiring Andrew Brunette if you're not hiring him to be the next head coach of your team? Like, you had to know that the second a job became available, Andrew Brunette was going to be in the front running for it. And if you weren't super sold on Lindy Ruff to the point where you were like, if he doesn't have a good year, we're going to fire him, which is exactly what happened, you probably just should have gone with Andrew Brunette to start the season. Not that it would have done anything, because their goaltending has been absolutely horrendous until Jake Allen came, and he's been totally fantastic for them.
Mm-hmm.
And what a goaltender can do.
We might touch on that. I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, Rachel, the trade deadline was basically a month ago.
Yeah.
3-4 weeks ago, really. That's a long enough time, I think, where we can start judging the players, specifically the biggest players, that switch teams.
Yeah,
So
because
that's
they've
what we're
all
gonna
had
do.
about like 10 games.
Yeah, like
It's
8,
like
9, 10 games.
50% of the season.
That's enough. That's enough sort of leeway to like be able to sort of extrapolate data from that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a look at some of the biggest names that changed teams that moved at the trade deadline, and we're gonna see if they've been good or bad. We're gonna give it through these. I'm not sure if you've seen on TikTok, Rachel, but there are these two guys. It's a father and son duo. The son is like 10 years old, but they look identical, and they're called
I have not seen this.
it's called it's called Big AJ and Big Justice. They're called, and they're these two Costco guys. They call themselves Costco guys, and it's literally they go to Costco and they're like, we're gonna order everything from the Costco food court and like see how and give it a rating of a boom, and they go boom, or a doom, and they go doom, and I think that they're adorable. I love them. And I think that's what we should do with this list. I think we should give these trade deadline acquisitions a boom or a doom
There's gonna be a
in
lot
honor
of booms on this.
of the Costco guys. Yeah, they really haven't been a ton of swings and misses, although there are a couple that I would like to get
There's
into. So
definitely one, yeah.
yes, there's one in particular. I think we're both thinking about it. But Rachel, let's talk about Noah Hannafin. Big price to be paid. Like there hasn't been a formal extension there, but you have to think they're talking extension with the Vegas Golden Knights. He's played 10 games. He doesn't have any goals yet, but I mean, it's a defenseman. 5 assists, 5 points. He's playing 22, 31 per night in ice time. He is almost like he's flirting with 60% expected goals, and he's almost 61% scoring chances for when he is on the ice. That's not too bad. That's pretty good.
Yeah, this is a huge right on the nose for Vegas. Ba-boom. Like,
Yeah.
just it's an incredible trade, not just because of how Hannafin's playing, but they've got, when healthy, and even when they're not healthy, quite frankly, like right now they're missing Alex Pietrangelo. And even now they have 3 pairings that are capable of shutting down other teams' top offensive guys. Like, even when Pietrangelo isn't in the lineup, so when you're missing arguably your best defenseman, you're still capably shutting down other teams' best players. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10, I believe. So that's with Noah Hannafin in the lineup. So when you look at it, his role is extra magnified right now because they don't have Pietrangelo. So they got Theodore and Haig on the top pair. And then they've got Hannafin, and he plays with McNabb. And then you've got Whitecloud on the bottom pairing. And when you look at it, Vegas is absolutely dominating with Hannafin on the ice. And he is thriving because he's playing in a better defensive system. But come the playoffs, and we assume that Alex Pietrangelo is going to be healthy for the playoffs. Come the playoffs, Bruce Cassidy, who's one of the better defensive coaches in the NHL, is going to be able to roll pairings that are as follows.
These are nuts.
Alex Pietrangelo and Shea Theodore.
Amazing.
Nick Hague and Noah Hannafin.
Unreal.
Brayden McNabb and Zach Whitecloud. Like, absolutely ridiculous. Any of those 3 pairings would probably be a top pairing on a lot of other teams.
What about Alec Martinez?
He's injured right now, so
do you think he'll be back for the playoffs?
We don't know. That's the one that they're not sure on. But if Alec Martinez is healthy, then
are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? If Alec Martinez is healthy, Nick Hague might be their 7th D. Nick Hague.
Or Brayden McNabb.
Or Brayden, either one. Those are friggin' good hockey players.
Your top 4 at that point is Pietrangelo, Theodore, Hannafin, Martinez. And that is a problem.
That's stupid.
For other
I'm gonna
teams
give that
when
a
it
boom.
comes to scoring. That's a big boom. So I think
that's a boom.
And if you look at it, all of those guys are a nightmare to play against. Brayden McNabb, awful to play against. Zach Whitecloud, don't enjoy that. Alec Martinez, not fun to play against. Shea Theodore and Alex Pietrangelo, not fun to play against. And then you get to the fact that they've added Noah Hannafin, who in a 1-2 role, he's probably not the best. In a 3 role, he might be the best second pairing defenseman in the league. Like,
Yeah.
it's incredible. He looks so good in Vegas, and it's amazing what a proper defensive structure can do for a player like Noah Hannafin. He just has had such a positive impact on the Vegas Golden Knights, and that's only going to continue as his role gets more filled out when Pietrangelo and potentially his D partner in Martinez come back. We're still not sure about Martinez though, so that's the thing. But even when he's playing in these elevated minutes, like he's anchoring the second pair, and
Mhm.
he is rinsing teams, like winning the scoring chance battle by a landslide, winning the expected goals battle by a landslide, not getting scored on at all. He looks really good. Like when you watch the Golden Knights play, you feel like you can't score against them, and that is a problem because in the playoffs, their building is arguably the most difficult building to play in.
Mhm.
And now you've got a defensive structure. So if that crowd's rocking and that defensive structure is holding, good luck scoring. I mean, that's probably not going to be fun. So I just think it's been probably the best deadline pickup. And we'll see if he resigns. But man, oh man, he looks good.
Well, I just checked, and his dad has a credit score of 830. So take all his accomplishments away. Anyway, Tyler Toffoli, acquired by the Winnipeg Jets for a package that should have been a lot bigger. And it is crazy to think of how much that price dropped. But he has been very good for them. 4 goals, 2 assists, 6 points, 15.07 average time on ice in 9 games. He seems to have lengthened that lineup. I mean, by just giving them a bit more depth. For the price of like a second and a third, even though he's a rental, he hit 30 goals. Not too shabby. I personally am going to give it a boom. Maybe not as emphatic of a boom as
it's not
Noah
a
Hannafin.
nuclear boom, but it's a
No.
boom.
Yeah, but it's definitely not a doom. It's a boom.
No. Yeah, it's definitely, we're not talking like kind of thing, but it's like the emoji that you can send on your iPhone that's like pop.
Yeah.
It's like that kind of boom. He's been an excellent fit. Like he's playing with Nikolai Ehlers, who's obviously a dual threat when it comes to passing and shooting, and Sean Monahan, who he's had experience playing with. That line looks really good. And by playing with Nikolai Ehlers, it's kind of allowing Toffoli to not have to really carry the load offensively because Ehlers is that dual threat. So Toffoli's able to take advantage of the fact that Ehlers is super unpredictable when it comes to his offensive entries and his ability to play off the rush, because sometimes he's just going to feed Toffoli the puck for high quality chances, and other times Ehlers is going to take the puck to the net and create scoring chances on his own that Toffoli can follow up on. And so this chemistry that they've developed has really given Winnipeg 2 absolutely solid lines. They're outscoring opponents steadily, and outside of a really poor game against the Edmonton Oilers, they've been dominant at 5-on-5. So if you remove the Oilers game, they were almost 60% in possession. And like, that is absolutely dominant. That is a problem to play against. The Jets aren't even healthy up front, but when they are, we talk about a lot lately. We've talked about having 3 productive lines and how important that is. When Gabriel Velarde comes back, he's probably going to slot in on that third line with Adam Lowry. So then you've got Mark Scheifele, Sean Monahan, Adam Lowry as your centers. And then you've got formidable ringers, right? You've got Kyle Connor on the top line with Mark Scheifele and Alex Iafallo, I believe. And then you've got Ehlers and Toffoli. And then you can have Velarde and Appleton. There's a lot of options that Rick Bowness is going to have at his disposal. And they're just like, they need to continue to improve and to win the possession battles, because when you're going up against a team like potentially Dallas or Colorado in the playoffs, your third line is going to need to be a difference maker for you, which means your second line needs to be scoring. And that's something they're going to need to continue to do. Because let's say they match up against Colorado, they're likely going to get the matchup against the middle stat line, which has either Arturi Lehkonen or Valeri Nichushkin on it, depending on how Jared Bednar is feeling. But Tyler Toffoli's been a real seamless fit in Winnipeg. He looks really, really good. 6 points in 9 games is definitely nothing to shake your head at. And I think he kind of brings them some depth on the wing that they're going to need in the playoffs, because even now you look like they're able to sustain not having Velarde in the lineup because Toffoli's been such a good addition.
I just don't know how they got that deal done. I get.
You're telling me like other contenders couldn't have made that deal?
Well, I mean,
I feel like they totally could have.
Yeah,
No,
no,
I'm not talking about the Leafs, but I'm just talking
but like
generally
anyone,
speaking. There wasn't a better deal out there. Like Vancouver needs wingers. You're telling me that they don't have a first, a second, or a third this year right now. But you're telling me that you couldn't have come up with a better deal than a second and a third?
they would have had to include a prospect that they don't want to trade. Even they
Exactly.
should maybe, but they don't want to trade. But like,
Well, it wasn't ever going to cost them Verlander or Lekkerimaki because that was like a Gensel type of deal, and Toffoli's
mhm.
absolutely not that. But I mean, if you
We'll
want
get
to
to
go
Gensel.
for it this year, could you not have made a better deal? If you're Toronto, you would have to send salary cap out the door. But could you not have made a better deal than a second and a third? Like, I think that they probably could have. It didn't have to be draft capital, it could have been something else. But I think you absolutely could have made a better deal there. Obviously, Carolina got Gensel, so that's not really relevant. Tampa got Duclair. So I sort of wonder if there was a better deal out there and teams, maybe New Jersey wanted the picks versus a prospect, which doesn't make really a lot of sense. But
Like imagine if Tampa and look, he's been very good so far, so maybe this is a bad example. And another player we're gonna get to, but like imagine if Tampa was like, all right, why don't we cobble together a package for Toffoli instead of Duclair? Like let's really swing for it. Like Toffoli would make, and again, Duclair has played very, very well for them so far.
he's
So
looked
maybe
excellent.
so maybe they know something that we don't. But I just like you look at it on paper and you go, that's better. Or I even think like I don't know, like Philly didn't want to buy. The Caps definitely didn't want to buy. They sold, and yet look where they are. They're in a playoff spot. Like I just think
But
that there
could
were
Detroit, if they wanted to buy, could they have bought? But right
Detroit.
now, Pia Suter is playing on the top line in Vancouver.
Yeah,
You're
like
telling me that
they
Tyler
need
Toffoli
something
wasn't a better
there.
option?
I even think like you look at like bubble teams.
Nashville?
Yeah, that was one that really came to mind. Like Nashville, LA, like a reunion in
Yeah,
LA.
LA would have been
I thought that like I
great.
was told like information wise that they were the leader, like they were leading the field, and then I guess like a couple other teams missed out on Jake Gensel, and it really sort of narrowed down. But man, this is like it just seemed like Tyler Toffoli was there for the taking. The guy has 30 goals. Like how many 30 goal scorers get traded at the deadline with two guys? 30 goal
Not a
scorers with
first
two
round pick.
cups.
Yeah.
For not a first round pick, like at 50% retained, like come on, you find a way to make that happen. All right. Speaking of former cup champions, Evgeny Kuznetsov,
And Jake
really,
Gensel for that matter.
and Jake Gensel. Yeah, you're right. Wow. There's three cups between those two guys. And it's friggin' insane that Jake Gensel and Evgeny Kuznetsov are on the same hockey team in the Metropolitan Division. And it's not either the Caps or the Pens. That is crazy to me.
Oh yeah, that is kind of nuts.
Like imagine
if you would have
imagine
told me
saying
that like 3 years ago, I'd have been like, sorry, what?
I would have if you were like, yeah, guess what? Like the Jake Gensel and Evgeny Kuznetsov, they're on the same team in the Metro Division now. I would have thought that one of them got traded to Pittsburgh or the other one got traded to Washington or whatever, but no, they've like, let's go congregate on the Hurricanes. And both are paying off pretty well. Evgeny Kuznetsov, keep in mind, Kuznetsov had basically not played for 2 months before he got just dropped into game action with the Hurricanes. He was with the player assistance program, but yeah, Chris Johnson wrote a great column about it where it was basically like he was like, hey, this is my last shot, and went from basically not playing or skating for 2 months to playing, I think it was like 3 games in 4 days with the Canes.
That's
So it
from a
was
sports
nuts.
science perspective. That's
Not
bad.
great. Yeah, but it worked out pretty well because 11 games, 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points, 15-35 in average time on ice. But he looks rejuvenated. As you say here, he fits the Canes system, and he looks like he just from looking at any behind the scenes content they put out and just looking at his body language during games, he looks like a happier, healthier, more involved, more engaged person and player. And that's exactly what we want to see. I'm giving it a boom for a third round pick at 50% retained with another year after. Boom.
Yeah, like I think at the end of the day, you're talking about a person here, right? That was going through clearly a rough period in their life in their lives. And it's one of those things where you just hope the best. Like whether or not they come back and are a great NHL hockey player is not really relevant when someone's in the player assistance program. Like you're worried about their well-being, or that is what you should be worried about. And if you're not, we probably need to have an entirely different discussion. But you're absolutely right. He is playing on the third line, and they have a ton of depth up the middle. He's playing with Jordan Martinook and Marty Necas. And I mean, Marty is like one of my favorite players to watch, so I love watching them play together. Listen, he's been a net positive, and most of the stuff that's detracting is his defensive play, but he's always struggled there.
He's
And
never been good defensively, except for
he's
that
never been
one
good
guy on Twitter
defensively.
that responded to
Yeah,
Jay Fresh. Other than that, that's the only person who's ever thought he's good defensively.
which, like, you're out to lunch. I don't know what to tell you, but
Yeah.
like Kuznetsov, it was always going to take whenever you take that time off, and it's not like you're coming back from injury. Like, you're in the program, you're not skating. That's not your focus. Like, you're not doing rehab physically on your body, and so it was always going to take an offensive player a lot longer to get their timing back, to get things back. And so I'm not necessarily surprised that he's not a point a game. Like, he hasn't been a point a game for a very long time. And so defensively, he was never going to be there. But the fact that he's a net positive and he fits in the Kane system of rush offense, using their skill and speed to funnel pucks to the net, like, he fits that perfectly. And now, because the Canes are 3 lines deep, he's only needing to get 15 minutes of time on ice. So when you look at it, you have Sebastian Aho and Jake Gensel on the top line with Seth Jarvis. That's great. Then their shutdown line has Jordan Stahl and Andrei Svechnikov and Teuvo Teravainen, who are all good two-way guys. Svechnikov, not as much, but Stahl's in the running for the Selke, and Teravainen's always been a really good two-way player. So that's a line that can not only score goals, but is going to win pretty much any matchup that they're in. And then that gives you the ability to have Kuznetsov on the third line with Martinuk and Nikash. And it's one of those things where they're able to just kind of like run wild and take advantage of the better quality of competition because they are the better hockey players in pretty much every scenario that they're playing in. And so, yeah, it takes a while to get up to speed after being in the PA program, but I think we can chalk a lot of his offensive kind of bad luck to him really finding his game. And at the end of the day, it's a third line player that is scoring at a half a point a game for like a third round pick. That's pretty good for me. I'll take that. I think he's going to score a key goal in the playoffs. He just has a knack for doing that.
And also he's got another year at 3.9. Like it's good. And the
Canes it's not
a
pure rental. And Rod Brindamore's gotten to him.
Yeah, clearly. Well, he just seems, and you know what? Like he did obviously have, like, he was obviously really tight with Ovi and all that, but he has Dmitry Orlov to hang out with, and Dmitry Orlov like vouched for him, and so did, you know, he's got some fellow Russians around him to sort of make him feel good, feel at home and supported. I really like it. Like, I just, you know, the Canes, what I like about them is they were very like regimented. Like, they were very, I don't want to say predictable, but like we definitely knew the kind of player and the kinds of moves that the Canes made. They're almost, it's very similar to like, you know, how we could basically predict down to like the day of what Kyle Dubas is going to do every season. Like the Canes, we know the players that they covet. We know this contract statuses that they covet. And yet I like how they just kind of flipped the script at the deadline, and they went, you know what? Like, we think we can win this year. We're going big on rentals. We're going big on like Evgeny Kuznetsov. We're just going to friggin' like throw everything at the wall. Let's try. We're going to pay the big price to go get Jake Gensel. And who's expiring. Like, they hate rentals, but they're like, it's Jake friggin' Gensel. Like, we're going to make that work. I really, really enjoy it. They're like, man, not only did I think they like vaunt themselves into sort of like contention, sort of like the leader of the contention pack, but they did so even more when looking at how well their very good on paper additions have like acclimated into their group. Like, it's just fantastic.
Oh, has Jake Gensel been good?
Jake Gensel's been good because he's the next guy we're talking about. Oh, by the way, Evgeny Kuznetsov, it's a boom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a nuclear blast, this next one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This is the end of the world.
It's like a bubble pop. You know those like package bubble pops?
Yeah.
That you can like tick, tick, tick. That. Jake Gensel, though, he's up there with Noah Hannafin. That is a nuclear baboom.
Jake Gensel is like, you know, put the National Alert Service on, get underground, you know, basically there will be nothing left to inhabit this earth because it is so radioactive for the next 100 years, level of nuclear blast, because Jake Gensel has come in and been the Jake Gensel that was advertised, and he came back from being injured and was like, I haven't missed a beat. 9 games, 2 goals, 10 assists, 12 points. He's playing 18-09 which will likely go up, just because
Yeah.
he's still getting eased in. And this is a freaking insane stat, is that Carolina is outscoring their opponents 16-1. 16-1 with him on the ice. That is absurd. That is, as like we said, as big of a boom as you can possibly
That's
have.
like a 94% goals for percentage. Like,
that's insanity.
if you calculate this, the impact that he's having, 94% not expected goals for, 94% goals for, 16-1. I can't believe I did that in my head. That is, he's such a systemic fit with Carolina. We just talked about Kuznetsov and how his offense really like vibes with what Carolina's doing. But holy crap, Jake Gensel next to Aho and Jarvis is a nightmare. Like, he's getting a ton of high danger chances, and he's either creating them for himself or he's getting the puck to Jarvis and Aho because he has a ton of primary shot assists too. And the reason he's doing this is because Carolina plays a more rush offense driven system. And somebody who skates like Jake Gensel, who reads the play like Jake Gensel, I think doesn't get enough credit. And we've heard Jesse Marshall talk about this. He's one of the smartest players in the league. From a hockey sense perspective, his ability to read the play and play off of guys. If you can play off of Sidney Crosby, you can play off of pretty much anybody. And now you're seeing the impact it's having on Aho and Jarvis, who have also looked a step above now that they're playing with Gensel. It's been incredible. And I think part of that is because Aho and Jarvis are so versatile offensively. They can both shoot the puck, but they can both also make plays. And Jake Gensel is exactly that too. And he's also just really smart. And so when you look at it, they're all able to create scoring chances for each other. And everyone's sort of playing an interchangeable role whenever they enter the offensive zone. It really just comes down to who has the puck and where the openings are. But all three of them are really good at finding the open space. They're really good at getting to the difficult areas of the ice and creating really high danger volume chances. And when you look at exactly what Carolina needs, last year, they didn't succeed in the playoffs because they could not get the puck by Bobrovsky, and they were really struggling to generate scoring chances. They are having no issues doing that now. And the fact that they're getting all these chances and they're giving up basically nothing it's honestly like it's totally crazy. And the Canes are going to be such a fun team to watch in the playoffs. I'm so excited. And it doesn't hurt that Frederik Andersen's come back either. That's definitely not hurt them.
Not just come back, but come back and being good. Like,
exactly.
It's not just like a moral victory that he was able to come back from just a terrible blood clotting issue, something that's totally out of his control and all that. But like, he's come back and he's been a good goalie, and that's huge.
So they got 3 major deadline acquisitions that, like, one of them was like a pop boom, like it was a low risk, pretty decent reward. One of them was a high risk and has been an extremely high reward. And then one was 0 risk and has come back and been great. So I think, if you look at Carolina, they may not win the Metro, but they're not going to be a fun team to play against in the playoffs.
They will not. This is probably the most surprising boom. Maybe not surprised. Like, he's a good player, but I did not expect him to play as well as he has here, or fit in as well as he's done here, in Anthony Duclair, Tampa Bay. They got him for basically nothing. Just throw in random picks. And here he is, 8 games in, 5 goals, 4 assists, 9 points in 15:07 of time on ice. What on God's green earth is going on?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, he wasn't a stylistic fit in San Jose.
No one is a stylistic fit on the San. If do you not suck, then you're not a stylistic fit.
You know what stat that I saw the other day that objectively blew my mind? The San Jose Sharks, you know how we talk about this team gives up a lot of shots, this team gives up a lot of shots. The San Jose Sharks, on the day that I last checked, it was like a few days ago, had given up 100 more shots than the next closest team. They had given up 100, basically 3 games worth of shots than the next closest team. And 31st place is bad. But if you're in 32nd by 100 shots, that is a big problem. So it's not really a surprise that Anthony Duclair didn't look good in San Jose, okay?
What on God's green earth is happening over in San Jose? What we need to there needs to be an investigation here.
Yeah. So if you look at Duclair, he wasn't playing with good players, like you pointed out. And John Cooper, to his credit, has played him on both lines in the top six. He's played with Anthony Cirelli and he's played with Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov. And
Oh,
he looked,
is John Cooper a good coach?
I think he
Yeah.
is a good coach.
Oh, that's news to me.
Total news. He's a pretty good lawyer too. But when you look at it, the reason Duclair has rebounded, one, I probably would do much better playing with Nikita Kucherov versus other players not named Nikita Kucherov too. So there's part of that. But Duclair playing with Point and Kucherov or playing with Cirelli and Stamkos, his shot quality has rebounded dramatically. And because he's getting in better spots to be able to take shots, his volume has rebounded. So you mean to tell me that a player who is shooting the puck more from more dangerous positions is scoring more goals? This is shocking news to me. Absolutely shocked.
Stop the presses, if we even use that to produce newspapers anymore these days. Yeah, no, it's wild. Look,
but he's getting he's on the top power play sometimes, and that helps. But the thing about Anthony Duclair is he's a really good passer. He's got he's a really good
underrated
passer of the puck. Yeah. So when you're playing with Nikita Kucherov, who's got 125 points or whatever it is, and you're good at passing the puck, do you think that might go well?
It might go pretty well.
It might go pretty good, right?
Yeah, Kucherov's a pretty good finisher. Steven Stamkos is a pretty good finisher. Braden Point's a pretty good finisher. Brandon Hagel's a pretty good finisher. The list goes on and on. I think even Nick Paul's a pretty good finisher. I think, you put him with good players and a good player will succeed. That's what made him thrive in Florida, was that he was around guys who are good finishers. He was on lines with, he played very briefly with Chuck, but he was on lines with guys who could put the puck in the net. That helps. Another thing that I think, yeah,
the thing about Duclair is he's one of those guys. You know how you and I talk about complimentary players? So can you drive the bus versus being a complimentary guy?
Yeah.
When you think of an ideal complimentary player for a lot of the players that you just listed, so an ideal complimentary player for a top tier elite player, Matthew Tkachuk, Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point, those kind of players, Anthony Duclair is exactly that, which then frees up your ability, and you can put a guy like Stamkos on another line, and it gives you that formidable attack. It's the same thing that we were talked about in Winnipeg, having 3 good lines. Same with Carolina. This gives Tampa the option to have multiple lines with scoring threats on them that are going to be a problem in the playoffs. And that's exactly what you need, because even if there are injuries, because Duclair can go up and down the lineup, it really gives John Cooper great options.
You know what else helps too? And it's not something people think about, but Duclair kind of reminds me of Max Domi in that the guy has played for 8 teams in his 10-year career. He's used to moving. He's used to moving mid-season. And so I think that the acclimation process that comes when a guy who's been somewhere for a long time or is having his first or second trade, there's a little bit of a grace period there. You see guys stumble out of the gate. I even think of some guy we're going to talk about soon, probably next, where something like that happens. That doesn't happen with Anthony Duclair. He's got the sort of the reps. He's got the muscle memory of moving teams and moving locales mid-season, and that helps him hit the ground running. And boy, has he! I'm giving it a surprisingly big boom.
He's one of those, you hear coaches talk about this a lot. He's a chameleon in the sense that no matter what situation you put him in, he seems to be able to acclimate. And obviously your measure of success, your abilities to succeed is going to change based on who you're playing with. Playing with Nikita Kucherov, you're probably going to have a better chance to succeed than Alex Barabanov, with no disrespect to Barabanov. But we're talking about Nikita Kucherov here. And
you know what?
Full
disrespect to Alex Barabanov. I've never met him before, but you know what? Starting to be.
But it's one of those things where he deserves a ton of credit for being able to have that chameleon sort of attribute in the sense that he just kind of fits in wherever he goes. And he might not be as successful as other places, but he's never been like a complete bust where he's been. He's always been sort of a guy that's been a really good complementary player, and you just need to find the right guys for him to succeed, to take advantage of like his natural abilities. And I think John Cooper's done a fantastic job of doing that. And full credit to Anthony Duclair for, I mean, getting there out of the San Jose situation, because that can really like ruin your confidence. He's come in and he has been incredible for Tampa, and I love to see it because I've been following Duclair since he was in the queue, and he's a guy like I've just felt like for whatever reason I've always wanted to cheer for. So I love that he is succeeding in the way that he is in Tampa. I think it's a fantastic move by Brisebois. Again, masterclass.
Yeah, you mentioned how before we move on, you mentioned how like it's good to see that Duclair has not lost his confidence in San Jose, and just from covering Duclair in 2 playoff series last year, I don't think him losing his confidence is a problem. That's a guy who that's a guy who believes in himself, as he should.
Good.
That's
As
great.
he should. Yeah.
All right, Rachel. Poor Edmonton. Ken Holland finally decides to go all in. Finally gets off his butt and does something at the deadline to help a roster that is 2 of the greatest players who have ever played this game. And he goes out and gets Adam Henrique, who through 10 games has 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points. He's averaging only 14.57 time on ice. And you know what? We can probably take one of those assists away, considering that he
his only assist.
Well, we can take that only assist away because he basically gave the puck to the Toronto Maple Leafs at home last Saturday night by, for some reason, not just going offside and blowing the play dead. He allowed them to just swoop that puck up and Bobby McMahon rip another goal. So we can probably take one of those assists away. It's been a bit of a disaster. His expected goals are horrible. 37.28% expected goals and 38.18% scoring chance share. Not great at all. This has been, especially for a team that paid a 1st round pick for this guy, and he's a rental. Yikes.
Yeah, it's not been good. I think not all of this is his fault. I think part of this blame goes to Chris Knobloch because he has decided to load up that top line with Hyman, Draisaitl, and McDavid. And I'm sorry, but that is not the best way to deploy those nuclear weapons. There's an argument to be made that all 3 of them should be on 3 separate lines, but I understand wanting to keep Hyman with McDavid, and they're having success, so you can leave that. But I think it's a coaching error to have those 3 on a line and then to have Adam Henrique sort of trying to figure out the second line situation. Put him with Draisaitl, or put him on the 3rd line and let McLeod go down to the 4th line and figure it out from there, because Ryan McLeod in a 4th line role is probably going to have better matchups and he's going to perform better. Adam Henrique in a 3rd line role is going to have better matchups and he's going to perform better. But if you want him anchoring that second line, that is just not a recipe for success. And so I think part of this is on Adam Henrique because he's not playing well, but the other part of it is on Chris Knobloch for not recognizing that you can't be deploying these guys in the way that you're deploying them. Like, it's just not a recipe for success. And so I think part of the reason Henrique hasn't fit in is because he isn't playing in a spot to succeed, like at all, in any way, shape, or form. And it's on him to sort of be able to make the best of the situation. But I also think it's on the coaching staff to put players in the best position to succeed. And loading up that top line so that you get cratered whenever they're not on the ice is not the way to do that.
Rachel, are you telling me that Zach Hyman's line is hoarding all the team's wealth and not allowing the other players the opportunities to succeed? Are you telling me?
Yes.
Wow. I guess the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, huh? That's, oh man. Anyway, yeah, look, it's you're right. I think you put it very well in that, like, it's on the player to make the best of a bad situation. Look, Adam Henrique is a very well paid player. He costs a lot.
He's a good hockey player.
He's a good hockey player. He has been to a cup final before. He has achieved a good chunk of stuff. So it's up to him to produce. At the same time, though, it is up to the coach to use his very high priced acquisition in a way that will allow them to succeed. And like you said, he's not doing that.
Now, we've sat here and said this.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Henrique is somebody who a coach said to me, Edmonton's not acquiring him for the regular season. We're talking about a guy who has scored 2, perhaps 3 playoff series winners.
Yes.
And if he scores 1 playoff series winner, people are going to be fine with it, right? I think when you look at Adam Henrique, hasn't performed well, but the Oilers are in a situation where if you perform in the playoffs, and Adam Henrique sort of has a knack for doing that, nobody's going to care about the regular season. But if this regular season continues into the playoffs and he doesn't perform in the playoffs, it's going to be a more talked about issue. But if this guy's 0.9 points per game in the playoffs, or he scores a couple OT winners, or he makes a couple really big plays, this conversation is going to be pretty void at that point, because like you say, you're acquiring somebody. When you're giving up a first round pick, I don't specifically care if you perform in the regular season. You better perform in the playoffs.
I think it's kind of irresponsible for the Oilers to acquire a guy for the postseason when they're just going to get bounced in round 1. I just think I just don't think it's a responsible allocation.
I don't know, man. I don't know
asset.
if they're going to get bounced in the round.
I don't. They're not going to get bounced round 1, but I do not believe in them. I'm sorry. I don't.
Really? Okay. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Who wins a playoff series, Edmonton or Vancouver?
Well, Edmonton. I don't believe in either team.
Okay, so there's a chance Edmonton gets to the conference final then.
Yeah, they'll get stomped. They got to
yes, they're not getting by Dallas or Colorado. Or,
they floated their way to the conference final 2 years ago and got friggin' obliterated by the Colorado Avalanche.
Man, they got stomped.
They were able to make if you're able to make the conference final with 48-year-old Mike Smith, who's literally giving a goal away every game, not like, oh, he didn't stop the puck. I mean, like passing it to the other team with an open net, and you're able to do that. I don't think that they're.
I can see the Oilers going on a run just simply because of those 2 nuclear weapons that they have. Put it this way: if Edmonton goes on a run, it isn't because of Adam Henrique.
Yeah, I don't want to be.
97 and 29 have been doing some things in the spring. And I mean, very similar to Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar, when McDavid and Draisaitl decide that they're taking things over, there is very little you can do.
The only thing you can do is sit back and let Stuart Skinner do his thing, in my opinion. Anyway, all right, now our final 2 guys got traded for each other. How crazy is that? It's the hockey trade that we spent an entire deep dive talking about a couple episodes ago, but it's Casey Middlestat and Bowen Byram. Excuse me. We are going to do Casey Middlestat first. He went to Colorado to give them top 6 center depth. In 8 games, he has 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points, 15-53 time on ice. And listen, he might not be exactly like on paper the guy you want in a 2C role, but he did replace Ryan Johansson, and although that is a low bar, he's at least an upgrade over him.
So before we even get into these 2, I'm going to say it's too early to evaluate this trade because these are not rental players. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just gonna touch on their play and go from there, because you're not pronouncing a winner or a loser or a boom or a doom on players that are under 24 that are going to be with their teams for years to come. This is not a rental acquisition where we need to figure out because this guy is leaving in the summer. These 2 guys are going to be with their teams for the foreseeable future. And so we'll have plenty of time to litigate this trade over the next probably 5 years. Yeah. So early returns, he's been an upgrade, like you said, on Johansson. Now,
low bar.
That's a very low bar. But specifically in creating offense, his shot assists are up, his passes to the slot are up, his attacking the middle. He attacks the middle at a higher rate. He's got more shot assists. He's better at turning pucks over on the forecheck. He's obviously got a higher volume of scoring chances. But I think part of this is also the fact that Valeri Nichushkin returned, and Choo Choo Train is a pretty good 2-way winger. And so no matter who Bednar is putting with Middlestat, whether it's Lehkonen or Nichushkin or whoever else you want to name at this point, Middlestat is surrounded with better two-way players than he had in Buffalo. And that's not necessarily a knock on the Sabres. It's just that the Avs are a cup contender. Like, they're naturally going to have better players down the lineup, and they're able to insulate Middlestat. And now Middlestat doesn't have to be the guy that's necessarily doing the legwork, because when you have Lehkonen and Nichushkin, you have guys that can really support you in all areas of the ice. And I think Middlestat's benefited from that. You probably want a little bit more than 5 points in 8 games. But like I said, way too early. They're still trying to figure out what his role on the power play is, how he fits into the offensive system. So I think it's far too early to evaluate the trade, but generally speaking, he's been a complete net positive for them. And that's exactly what they need. He's provided more than Johansson has. It allows Ross Colton to go down to that third line. And so Colorado is in a better spot than they were with Ryan Johansson. And I think in a vacuum, that's really all that matters.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Bowen Byram.
It's my God.
10 games, 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points, 23.07 of time on ice. He obviously got put in the more difficult position. Like he got dropped onto basically the top pair of a team that is not in the playoffs and is still trying to work its way up and dealing with injuries, and the list goes on. But this is a good young player who has contributed offensively and is playing huge minutes for them so far. And it really goes to show, like you said, we can't making any judgments on this trade right now would be foolish.
Yeah, and I think when you look at it, the Colorado Avalanche aren't in a spot from a contending perspective where they can afford to be giving a young player minutes to develop and find themselves in the way that they did with Cale Makar early in his career when he came out of UMass, right? They're not in that position. They're trying to win. Whereas Buffalo, Don Granato is a fantastic development coach. You look at what he has done for Tage Thompson, JJ Paterka, Jack Quinn's back, Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power have looked incredible under him. And so giving Bowen Byram that runway under Don Granato is going to be huge. And like you said, because Power was out when Byram got to town, he got thrust into that top pair minute where realistically, I think he's better suited for second pair minutes. So he struggled to win his minutes, but a newsflash, nobody in Buffalo is winning their minutes because they're still kind of all developing, but they're outscoring opponents 11-10 on from a goals perspective. So even though they're losing the scoring chance battle, they are still outscoring. Obviously, it's pretty even. But I think from a Byram perspective, we're talking about a player that's still developing, that is being thrust into a totally different role that he's going to have to develop into because he never really played that role in Colorado. So this is more about the longer term impacts. And where is Bo Byram in 2 seasons, right? Because if he's 24 years old and chewing up 23, 24 minutes on the second pair and scoring potentially 45 to 50 points, yeah, you're going to be pretty happy with that, right?
Exactly.
So I think this is a situation where right off the hop, the trades worked out for both teams. They're getting what they wanted versus kind of not really helping. Middlestat wasn't necessarily going to be able to help because they've got Dylan Cousins and they've got so many other players up the middle that he just wasn't going to get that opportunity. And Byram was never going to get the opportunity ahead of Makar. For sure wasn't getting that opportunity. And so I think when you make that swap, right now they're both net positives for their team in the sense of they've got a ton of time with Byram to develop into that hugely positive player that he's capable of being. And Middlestat is providing more offense than Ryan Johansson, so he makes the Colorado Avalanche better. So both teams got better, not necessarily in a vacuum, but switching out Ryan Johansson for Sean Walker and Casey Middlestat. And so that's basically what you did, is you gave up a pick, Ryan Johansson and Bo Byram, and you got Casey Middlestat and Sean Walker. And I think that's been better for Colorado than what they had before.
Yeah.
And then obviously Byram has been better than Middlestat was. And so I think it's kind of a win-win.
Absolutely. I think it is. Look, it's addressed, like we said before, it's addressed needs that both teams needed to address for the playoffs. All right, well, the sun is pouring in, which means that it's time to wrap up the podcast. But we will be back hopefully in person on Monday. Which would be great. Tuesday. Sorry. I'm still trying to wrap my head around our new schedule. Anyway, we'll be in your ears on Tuesday, and in person as well.
MLB is back, and I wanted to say this because I've had too many DMs from all of you asking me. MLB is back. March Madness continues this weekend. Obviously, there's hockey stuff. There's people have been asking to follow my bets. I'm on Pickett now, so you can see the bets that I take. If you type in Nemo when you create an account, it'll take you directly to my profile. So if you want to follow what I'm taking, that is where you can follow me. I am not going to be DMing all of you my picks. If you want to follow them, that's where you can follow them. Pickett, it's Pikkit. That's where I'm kind of tracking everything, and it's just easier for people to kind of like tag along because you can copy the bet like within the app. And it's honestly just a way easier way for me to have people like tail what I'm doing as opposed to me like DMing each and every one of you. So if you've stayed this long, there's your little tip for you. And we'll like I've been tweeting it out. So if you just like click that, you'll be good to go.
Rachel, speaking of betting in baseball, I need access to your bank account because I need to pay a bookie $4.5 million.
You're not going to be getting access to any of my bank accounts.
And I just hope that you don't notice that it's gone, or else it might be an interesting. You might fire me from the podcast. It'll be terrible. All right,
I might fire you. Yeah,
I might. Yeah. At least I don't have to translate for you. All right, so it is. Obviously, subscribe to us on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitch. And literally any podcatcher you can find. That's where we are. Write us a review, rate us. It'd be great. And obviously donate to Jumpstart, our charity of choice. Jumpstart helps economically disadvantaged children play team sports, which is a cause that is very near and dear to Rachel and I's hearts. And until then, we will see you on Tuesday.